Welcome to The Most Mindset, where you'll hear real conversations about mindset, mortgages, and mastery for loan officers and originators who have outgrown being undervalued and underpaid. Here's your host, Michael Most.
Hello, everybody. Back to the Most Mindset podcast. I am extremely honored to have Bill Gross on with me today, a genius in the podcast world, one of the most knowledgeable people I know in the probate world, a well-established real estate agent. How we met's a pretty funny story. We have a lot to cover here today, but I'm just honored to have you back, Bill, on a podcast because you recently hosted me. So welcome aboard.
Well, thanks so much. Always a pleasure to chat with you, whether it be podcast or in real life. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. Give us a little background on who you are, or actually before you tell us all that, can we go all the way back? Because this is something that would be interesting for me. You're an extremely educated individual who started out in a completely different world. So walk me through just a little bit. You're a kid, you're growing up. Do you want to be a scientist? You didn't want to do a probate real estate, right? So what was it like growing up? And then how did you get into this? Like, what made you even know about this?
You know, everybody who knew me through high school assumed I'd be an attorney. I was on the debate team in high school and college, took third in the state of California, top 10 in the United States in college, on scholarship at USC, and applied to law school, but I was broke. And all the people I saw at law school were miserable. And so I just decided I want to go that route. I got into computers and electronics, and I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and including a time I moved to Florida with my college roommate where we launched a business there back when IBM was building PCs in Boca Raton, and that was a new concept. My father got ill. I moved back to California. My brother kind of tricked me into getting into real estate by working with him a little bit. I started in mortgages. I did mortgages for about 15 years. And then at that time, I had the same license to sell some houses. I sold a few. And with the big mortgage meltdown in 2008 and 9, and every company I worked with was going broke, I said, I need to find some way to sell myself and compete. And so I decided to go into real estate because at least I could control the branding, control the operations. And so I moved full-time to real estate about 2009, and then got seduced into coaching for a company. I had a coach, and he asked me to help coach for him and manage for him. And I became the executive director for a company. We had, 12 branches and did real well. But I realized I lost the passion because it wasn't my business. And so in 2020, about 6 years ago, I was 60 years old. And I said, I don't want to work for the man. I got into real estate to work on my own. And I relaunched in real estate, and I'd been exposed to probate real estate. And so I kind of did some research into that and then launched all my chips in on that niche 6 years ago, and I built a great business that I today sell houses here in Los Angeles County. I have a team across the country and have a podcast that's really helped me build that platform.
It's really, really impressive. So whether we want to thank him or blame him, it seems like your brother got you into real estate.
I love my brother. He's fantastic. Yeah, he got me into real estate, and we worked together for about 3 months. He was at a big S&L. In those days, we did neg-am mortgages, and then I moved to a fixed rate company so we could kind of cover the whole market together, and we worked pretty closely, and we had a lot of fun. We definitely kicked some rear end in the San Gabriel Valley area in mortgages for years.
So walk me through and educate me and educate anyone that's listening here a little bit about probate. So when you hear probate, for example, first of all, it's very defined in the state of California. More than, let's say, someone like myself who comes from New York, kind of heard of probate. You have this general idea in your head what probate might be or might not be. But if you could dummy it down in maybe a sentence or two, what is probate? What does it mean, that you specialize in it? And why doesn't everyone do it?
So as far as what is it, probate really describes the passing of assets from somebody who passes, most commonly, to whoever they intend to, or they didn't intend to, but the state has a plan, right? In California, if you don't have a will or you don't have an estate plan, the state of California has a plan for you. They're going to execute their plan. So it's really the laws that define it, and the laws vary by state, and the procedures and processes vary by county typically. So it's the process by which property passes from somebody, one human being who's deceased, to whoever else the next entity might be, whether it be their heirs, it might be nonprofits, it might be charities, it might be the government collects the money, it might be creditors that collect the money. So it just depends. And then why doesn't everybody do it? So I think the thing that I saw was most people run from challenges. And what I saw in my career in real estate when I was reconfiguring was that the obstacle is the path. If it's hard to get to do something, that means most people won't even try. If I can figure it out, then I'm one of the few people doing it. And so when I researched probate, I also saw other people who were doing it well. To my way of thinking, mostly were doing it in a shortcut way, weren't really doing it for the customer. They were doing it because they had established businesses and they get away and cut some corners. And so I just figured if I just outworked them, I would be able to develop a nice business for myself by doing things the right way. And so that's really what I've done.
It's interesting you say that. So when I was younger and single, I had a friend who taught me an amazing rule when we would go out in New York City all the time. And the few times we went out, we were pretty young. And you'd walk into some of these bars and there's always one girl there that's like the most beautiful girl in the room. And I was like, oh, check her out, whatever. He's like, yeah, go for it. And she's the most beautiful woman in the world in the room here. And he goes, you need to go for it because no one else will. And if you can convince her to go out with you for some crazy reason, no one else is going to compete against you. So it's funny, I learned a similar type language, obviously in a social setting years ago, but how that challenge can really, as you said it eloquently, become the road and the path to success. So rather than shy away from that challenge, it looks like you've taken the bull by the horns and really run with it. So if you can maybe just elaborate on one more piece. So you do probate, which means that probate, as you explained, is something that instead, like you said very well, the state of California has a plan for you.
Yeah.
You don't have a plan.
We have a plan for everything.
Your plan. Correct. So that's in place. So what happens, just walk us through maybe some of the minor, like still high level, but logistically what happens? Unfortunately, someone passes away and they have a home, right? And they did not leave a will or a trust for that property to go into. So therefore it goes to the state. And then the state auctions off that house, or what happens there and how do you get involved? Well, connect the dots.
So most commonly, somebody knows somebody died and they want to sell the property. They don't know where to start. So the decedent, the first thing you have to do is see, well, what did they own? Do they own the property or not? Sometimes you think they did. It turns out, well, they didn't own the property. Their parents did. And they just they inherited it by sitting around, but they never legally inherited the property. Well, really, that's now a probate for those parents because that never really got done correctly. And so this is a case where each case is different. When I try to tell real estate agents, and I always offer to people or loan officers, if you have a problem in an area, call me. 90% of the time, I can help you solve the problem with just a phone call in a couple of minutes. But best practice, anytime you list a property for sale, get a copy of preliminary title report. That will tell you who owns the property. It may not be who you think it is. And same with a refinance. You order, a prelim as a loan officer and make sure you check the title and see who it is. If it's somebody other than the person who signed your application, then you probably have a probate problem that you have to solve through probate. And so oftentimes there's an ex-wife involved, or there was, parents involved, or when they bought it with somebody and that person passed, but that person never did a probate or never signed the property over. So there's a lot of different circumstances where somebody is already decided to sell the property, but they discover that there's a probate issue related to the title. And the solution is oftentimes going to court. Now, it sounds simple. Well, you just have to go to court and get it probated. Well, it's simple until it's not. It's simple but if you don't do the paperwork right, it could take years to get approval to sell the property. If you don't do it correctly, other heirs will object, and now you're in a court battle to get the property sold. So I always tell people, it's never a problem until it's a problem, and the goal is to try to avoid that by planning ahead, doing your research, and figuring out what you have and what you need.
So then, assuming that there's a probate problem on title, what you're then doing, right, is helping them fix that problem in whatever manner or whatever way you possibly could. So is there a situation where the court owns the property, where it goes to the court and then the court is therefore picking someone with experience? Or I guess where I'm going with this is, where do you get your leads from? Is it just because you are a guru in the space and people know you? Or where do the leads generally come from in probate real estate?
So probate's a big space. There's a lot of different ways to work it. Personally, my goal is to have professionals like you and your colleagues, real estate agents around the country, other groups of people who come across transactions, say, oh, I have a problem. What do I do? One example, I had a lender call me because there was, a property with 5 brothers who owned the property. 4 were alive and 1 had died. Well, the one who died can't sign the deed, and yet he owns 1/5 the property. The only solution is to get somebody to file probate so the court will authorize somebody to sign on behalf of that decedent's estate, whether it be their heirs or just the estate, and then later it gets settled up. So my leads come from loan officers, real estate agents, attorneys, fiduciaries, escrow, title, people who are in the business who have a problem and go, I don't know how to solve this. And they give me a call and I look at it. And like I said, many times it's a simple solution. Sometimes there is a trust, but sometimes there's a trust, but you want to do it properly so that you don't, light a fire and create more litigation where it does not be done. So to answer your question, my leads come from, like I think you, professional networking with loan officers, real estate agents, and other professionals.
Makes sense. That's very, very interesting. So when you got into this, how long do you think it took you to see all the different types of scenarios? Because it sounds like you've seen a lot of them, right?
I feel like it's kind of like a baseball card collection. I still learn every day, and I purposely, and I enjoy it. I think that one of the things is you should enjoy what you do. So for me, I go to court, I was in court on Friday on a matter, or online I'll watch on court. And I really oftentimes will listen in other matters to see what the conflict is, what the judge says. I also collect a lot of data. I collect every single court confirmed sale. So of all the probate cases, about 10% in LA County need the court to approve the sale. I've tracked every one of those sales for the last 6 years. I have who the listing agent was, the buyer's agent, the buyer, the seller, the numbers, the property address. I track those because the more information I have, the more advice I can give an attorney as to what they really can expect when it comes time to get the property sold.
What happens if somebody in the state of California is deceased or passes away and did not have a trust or anything? Then the property goes to the state. Like you said before, the state has a plan. So what happens?
What doesn't go to the state goes to who. There's a priority list of who would get it. We'd start with the spouse, there's no spouse, and the kids, and I don't know the law. So something like the kids, and they have no kids, and the siblings, if no siblings, the parents. They would continue to research until you found who it was. So I've had cases where a neighbor called me and said, hey, I have this house, and I know the person died, but nothing's happened for 2 years, and there's drug dealers in it, it's a mess. Well, I hired an heirs research company to find out third cousins who were the only living heirs. And basically we called them and said, hey, we have this house. It's worth about $500,000. There's 3 of you. You'll each get about $100,000 after expenses. Are you interested? And they're, oh, yeah, sure. And so I helped them by getting the probate filed and getting the property sold and distributing the funds. So it never goes to the state unless there are cases where literally there's nobody. Then the county in LA County will have attorneys that will sell the property. If they haven't found anybody, they'll just hold the money in the county and eventually will take it. But that's very rare. Almost all the time, there's an heir somewhere that will get the property and get the benefit of it.
Interesting. So is there when you talk about data, is there a source of I hate to sound morbid, but do you track the obituaries and stuff like that? Is there a data search that you're constantly being updated on, whether it's via title or not, to generate leads?
So there are people who do buy data. There's such data available called pre-probate data, which is really people who passed, cross-reference with people in property, and they get the phone numbers or whatever from that. I don't do any direct-to-consumer marketing personally. All mine is through professionals. So I know people do that, and they cold call families, and hey, I see so-and-so passed, do you need, what are the plans of the property? I don't do that. I only really do podcasts like this on my own, where I reach out to professionals who deal with these problems as a professional and need somebody to help them solve the problem. So for me, it's just a more efficient business to talk to a Michael Most. Then eventually I have to talk to his customer, obviously, to handle the sale. But you'll call me, you already have a prelim, you already have a scenario, you already have what the motivation is. And my job is to kind of unwind the thing for you and help you get it done. So for me, I don't access that data, but I know people do. I don't know anybody who accesses pre-probates successfully. I know people sell the data. I think it's a bit of a ripoff. And I do know that a lot of companies will sell probate filing data, which has the number of the attorney as well as the number of the petition who filed the petition. And they encourage people to cold call those. I don't do that. Again, I feel like that's a little slimy. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying for me personally, I don't want to make those phone calls.
So let's walk through an actual example. And this is a segue into, a lot of lenders. I know that you try to refer me as often as you possibly can. I'm sure there's probably a couple of other lenders and relationships that you have over time.
Yeah.
What is it? So walk me through the process, because we just went through a deal together.
Yeah.
We could share that with people here.
Yeah.
Where you have a deal and maybe start with the probate piece and then the court filing and then the timing and then how does this all go down in an actual?
So the actual source of business was an attorney when I first started in 2000, maybe 2009, 2020, probably 2019 pre-COVID. I was going to court every day. I assigned an attorney in a matter, and there were 2 sides that wanted to represent the estate and sell the property. And I reached out to both of them and said, hey, I'm independent. I know how to sell property that needs court confirmation. I'm an expert in the area. If I can help you, reach out. And one of those attorneys did. And we've done business over the years. She has a client who's a fiduciary. A fiduciary is somebody who an estate might hire to manage the affairs. Maybe the kids are arguing. Maybe there's nobody who has the expertise to handle things. So a fiduciary is being represented by that same attorney I'd met. And there was a dispute on the property. How much should we sell it for? How do we get top dollar? So she said to the attorney, well, we need a court confirmation sale. I know the best guy to do that for you. And she introduced the fiduciary to me. So in this case, I helped the attorney by check the filing, the petition. I work with her paralegal to make sure that there's different steps you have to file. We intend to sell this property. The contract is written a certain way. We get it into escrow. There's certain requirements. And then we go to court. I showed up at court. In this case, our buyer, your client, showed up. There's no overbidder, so she was able to get her sale confirmed. And then she has 10 days plus or minus to get the property sold. So that deal all came from an attorney I met 6 years ago, have a relationship with. And then she introduced me to a fiduciary who had a property that needed court confirmation. She didn't really know what to do, and she brought me in as the expert in that area.
So just breaking this down a little bit so I could even understand it. And I think we have a pretty wide range of other loan officers and people that really do this on a daily basis. So if we could dummy it down one more level, even just for me, when that fiduciary, who's kind of like the mediator in some ways, handling whatever issues there were, right? So someone passed away or the property is just sitting in limbo. So the fiduciary reaches out to Bill Gross and says, Bill, I need your help to sell the property.
Correct.
Okay. So now your job in what you do is you clean up title so that it can become sellable, right? For whatever probate or issues that might be on there, you check, you make sure that title is clean enough that you can sell it. You
Correct.
then put it on the market.
Yep.
And you find the borrower. So the borrower comes and now there's a bidding process, you said, or is it just like a regular home? It's a home listed for sale and people can come and bid on it as they see fit.
A lot of misunderstanding in this process. A lot of attorneys, I literally had one on Friday say it all wrong. The initial sale is no different than any regular sale, as long as you have the proper disclosures, which tell the buyer, once you've cleared contingencies, we then file to go to court to confirm the sale. And I told them that's about 35 days from filing to the hearing date. And then once the judge approves the sale, then you have about 10 days that you close the deal. Now, many buyers will say, well, yeah, but I can't lock my loan in because, I work clear contingencies. I need a 45-day rate lock or a 60-day rate lock, and it's more expensive. There you go. It is more expensive. You need to understand that process. Also, the buyer has waived all contingencies or deposits at risk. As you know, in the deal we had, the buyer discovered that her lender couldn't perform. That's why I made my 911 call to Michael Most to say, and frankly, I said to her, I don't really care if you sell or not. We're going to take your money and resell the property, or you're going to close. One of those two is going to happen because my attorney doesn't care. My attorney wants the money and wants this deal done. And I encouraged her to talk to you. I told her I'd give her a little more leeway in the time if she's working with you versus somebody else. And so she chose to work with you. But to answer your question, it's a regular sale. And this is a big misnomer. Some people think, well, it has to be the buyer buys it with all cash. No, the buyer has to buy it with no contingencies. No, she did an inspection. She did appraisals. She did a couple other things. I can't remember all of them. She did everything a buyer might normally do. Then one day she said, fine, I'm ready to go. And then we file a petition with the court. We get a hearing with the court. We show up in court. And that's the trick also is I have to work with the attorney to make sure that when we show up in court, it's ready to go. Oftentimes, it's very complicated. There's little details that are missed. And my job is to help make sure that we go to court, it's successfully confirmed, so then we can move to closing.
So it seems like there's the borrower gets ready, then there's the filing of the petition, right? And then step 3 is the confirmation from the attorney. In your years, and then from after confirmation, you have 10 days, although you could extend it if you wanted to, but you have 10 days is a shot clock of like, okay, let's go. Between petition and filing, or confirmation, I'm sorry, have there been cases where it doesn't get approved? Or is this a process that if it's done right by someone like an expert like yourself, it's always going to go through the system so long as you follow the right steps? Or, because I'm putting on the buyer's hat. So if I'm a buyer and I lift all my contingencies, but now I'm like worried, am I just relying on Bill Gross, the amazing guy, to hopefully get this confirmation? Or I'm pretty confident because you've been doing this so long, it's just a process and you will get confirmation.
So I'll say I will. And I believe I'm an expert. That's the exact process that I'm the expert in, to give that buyer the confidence to say, look, most attorneys don't even know what probate notes are. I check the probate notes on this case every day so that when the judge has an attorney who reviews the petition to see if it's ready to be confirmed or not. and they'll actually write notes. It's like an online system. Maybe like getting notes from your underwriter. Hey, you're missing this pay stub, you're missing this bank statement. And I'm catching those things, and I immediately contact the attorney. I immediately contact the other agent if we're missing something, or escrow. And I'm on those things like a hawk, so that when we show up in court, everything is ready to go. So I know the process. I help with the publication. That's a very important detail, that if you're going to do a court confirmation, you have to publicize it in certain legal papers. It has to be a certain way. I work with the leading vendor in that area and make sure that happens properly. So there's a lot of little details that, and I can tell the buyer's agent, hey, I am an expert in this, and you can rely on me to update you 100%. And if there's a problem, you can hold me accountable for that. I can tell you that most of all court confirmation hearings, 1 in 4 end up confirming the sale.
Wow.
2/3 either get delayed or denied because the attorneys don't know what they're doing, or the realtors don't know what they're doing, or both, or there is no attorney. So that's a case where I can say, look, there is a risk to this. You're right to be concerned. Let me walk you through what the process looks like. Let me show you. Let me go online. I'll Zoom call you and show you the notes and the processes and procedures, explain this to you. If you want to go to court, I'll show you where to go so you can see another court confirmation sale. Or you can go online now for free and see an actual confirmation sale. So my job as the agent is to really teach and coach the buyer's agent, and in turn, perhaps their customer, to be comfortable with this, because if I can do that, I'm gonna get the house sold. If I don't do that, buyers are nervous and may or may not close.
So to put you on the spot here for a second, how many of these do you do a year, and what percentage of them do you get confirmation on?
I don't think I've never not. Well, okay. I deal with some pretty hairy litigation. I have a case right now where the petition was denied, but my client was okay with it. I can't really get into much detail in a public format, but I would have to say, anytime a customer's ever wanted the property sold, we got it sold. I mean, that's not an option in my world, because you're not going to do business with attorneys. This is a small world of probate attorneys in Los Angeles County, and I have a reputation to support. And look, I walked in Friday, the judge recognized me. It was really nice. I mean, that's something you earn over time that most people don't even go to court and ever see the judge. So how many of these I've done? I don't know. Of court confirmation, I'm sure 100 or so. I mean, it's 5 years. I did a bunch of small ones as well, so it sounds more glamorous than it is. I haven't done 100 $2 million properties, but I've done a lot of 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, 300,000 properties as well. But I would say, about 100 court confirmations.
So that's really impressive to selfishly plug you here, which was not my original intention, but I got to give you credit. I got to give you credit, Bill, which is, if 1 out of every 4, which means 3 out of every 4 either get suspended or don't get confirmation. You've done north of over 100 of them, and anyone that's listening here should just think probate or think any complication, just give you a call, because it seems that there's a lot of minutia in the details, which is similar to what I deal with on a mortgage side, as you're pretty familiar with.
Yeah.
And I think I could take the same pride in saying that I don't think I've ever lost a deal, or I've ever had a deal denied. Sometimes borrowers call you and they worry about that, and I try to put them at ease. And no, I'm taking you to the finish line, and that's how you get in relationships with someone like yourself. I give kudos to you that you find a way, and it seems that you do a lot of that because you're doing a lot of the work preemptively,
100%.
and you're a step ahead between the
100%.
notes, and you're seeing the picture way before the picture's even printed.
One of the things I tell people, I like to work with great attorneys, but I do a real good job for bad attorneys, or attorneys who don't know the process, and they're really using me as expertise. An attorney might know all the law of California, but I know the little narrow slice that I work in. I know the procedures. I know the judges in many cases. So that's where I create more value and help them go deep on that. So yeah, definitely that's where I come in. And I would just say, to any agent you work with who's making an offer on a probate property, they might be scared if it's a regular probate. I'm glad to walk them through and research the case and tell them the pluses and minuses, what to be paid attention to. Sometimes it's a great attorney, don't have to worry about it. Sometimes there's no attorney, and who knows if it's ever going to sell or not. So these are things that I deal with all the time, with whether it be a loan officer or a real estate agent on probate. I'm glad to answer questions. That's where my business comes from.
So let's segue into the relationship between you and loan officers. And as I can appreciate, and you mentioned before, I am your 911 call, which I definitely appreciate.
Dude, we used to in California how on the side of the freeways, those red boxes, you'd pull over, pull it up, say, I need some help. That's a Michael Most phone call for sure.
Well, let me ask you, in the process, right? So you're someone that has a lot of experience. You've done mortgages, you've coached mortgage, you're now on the complete 100% real estate side. If you're talking here, and there's the audience here primarily is one of two people, either real estate agents or mortgage advisors. So can I get your opinion? If you're a mortgage advisor, tell me, in your opinion, Bill, how can the mortgage advisors listening here develop those kind of relationships where they become the 911 call and or preemptively become that call before it becomes a 911, and then flipping hats, and I know you can do this because you're a great debater, flipping hats as a real estate agent, how can you train or coach them that they should have someone that they have a relationship with that they can call as their 911 versus then, and I guess where I'm going with all this is there's that crazy myth of like, oh, I got to give out 3 names and I got to give out
I
like,
hear that all the time.
four
That's just
referrals.
nonsense. That's just
Talk to me
nonsense. Can I
about
just
that.
say on the record, that's just nonsense. Why? So if I think one's the best, I am supposed to give out 2 other people who are inferior to cover myself so I don't get sued? Is that really what I'm supposed to do? It makes no sense. I'm sorry. That one just kills me. I hate hearing that. I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't know what
Yeah,
to do, but
no problem. But circle back to me. So for real estate guys that are listening and girls and mortgage people, how do you define that glue in the relationship? And why do you feel it is as important as it is? Because you and I both agree and believe that.
yeah,
But
for sure.
maybe you can share some light on that.
Well, I mean, I have a little unique experience in that I was a mortgage lender and executive in mortgages, for the first 15 years of my career. So I know your business from the inside. It's how I met Joel. We were colleagues, I wasn't a realtor at the time. And so I know how hard it is. It was interesting when I became a realtor, I didn't realize how hard it was to get business from realtors until I was in a Keller Williams office and I just assumed, oh, they're the lender of the office or they come in or they have relationships. Man, it is hand-to-hand combat to get business from agents. And so many agents are really incompetent that you're spending time chasing people who have no business. And I saw how hard it was for originators to develop good business. And so I think the way I think of it is I'm a listing agent. I really don't work with buyers at all. Partly because doing a probate, attorneys expect me not to have any conflict or appearance of conflict. So on all my listings, I send all the buyer's leads to another agent to let her or him handle the buyer's leads even. I offer to let them put their signs up instead of mine if they want to. It's my listing contract. I'm in the MLS. But I think that still people ask me about mortgages, and you are the best originator I know, and you'd be the one I would refer them to when that happens. It's not that often, but when it is no question. Because I think as a professional, we're expected to serve our customers. I don't get anything from you. I don't want anything from you. I'm not pitching it. I'm just saying what I want is if I have a customer who has a problem, I want the problem solved. I get paid really well. In this case, yesterday doing it, it's a $1.62 million purchase. I get paid really well. And by the way, I have another listing from that same fiduciary. I have multiple properties from that attorney. So I just need the deal closed. I just need you to do what you do. And I need to get out of your way and be able to help you when you need something and jump on it and then stand back and let you do your job as best I can. So to answer your question, I feel like as a professional, my job is to create value for my customers. And as I said, and this is one of my pet peeves, I don't give out 3 names and numbers. I give out the best. Like anything else in life, when somebody asks me who the handyman is, if I know a great handyman, I'll give them. If I don't make it up and give them names out of Yelp because they might be average and they're not going to get the service that reflects on me properly. But when it's time to get a mortgage, whether it be a consumer that I work with, a friend, family member, client, or in this case, the buyer's agent on the other side, well, we're really threatening them. Hey, if you don't get this thing closed, we're going to cancel you, but I'll give you a little extra time if you work with somebody who I know is good. And in her case, she was, wasting time with Rocket Mortgage. Oh my gosh. I hate these companies, whether it be Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Once you hear that big corporate name, as a listing is never good. And in her case, because it's a probate, she waived contingencies, I let her make her own decision because we're going to get paid one way or the other. And I know she could probably write a check if she had to close in this case. So, but to answer your question, I think it's important that we have these relationships with people that create value for our customers. And that's why I have a great probate bond company. I have a great inheritance research company. I have all kinds of attorneys I work with for different specialties. And I have a great originator. I think any realtor should have that relationship.
I can appreciate that. Thank you. And what was funny is when she first called me on this deal that we're working on now, she's actually an originator, which is the funniest
How about
thing in
that?
the world. And so at first I was very skeptic, red flag and whatever. And to your earlier point, there are those that do a type of business and there are those that really excel in that business.
Yes.
And it got to that point where, and people hear this all the time. Well, I mean, an originator is an originator, but any buyers that are listening to this, I've closed more loans for other originators, right? People have always asked me in my career, they go, who are like your favorite loans to close? And I always tell people my favorite 3 to close family, realtors, or other originators. And generally speaking, those are the three loans that no one wants to do. The reason why I love doing them is A, like you and I discussed before, no one else wants to do them. And B, I lack no hesitation. I have full confidence that I can get those deals done, because if I can get it done for my own family, they are going to refer their friends and network. If I can do it for an actual real estate agent, well, then who's he going to refer his buyers to? And if you can
Be a
do it for
podcast telling
another
people how good you
originator,
are.
yeah, I mean, if you're good at it, do it, right? And if you're not good at it, maybe you should get out of the kitchen. So I want to preface this where I want to share a quick, funny story that I have from meeting you, and then preface this with you maybe sharing something that, whether it's from your debate days all the way to your probate days, something that would be like really, really comical. So mine with you is not mine is I guess more ironic than anything else. You read and hear about people that build a network. And anyone that's listening to this will hear that people build a network. Talk to your barber, talk to the guy at the grocery store, talk to people, you know what I mean? You'll build your network, your community around you. And a lot of people hear that, it doesn't really resonate with them. For me, I was just starting out in the Los Angeles community because I had been doing mortgages for 18 years in New York, and I came here. So what do I know? I know nothing. And I find the local newspaper in my community, and I said, you know what? I'm going to advertise here. Now, the funny part to the story is my company that I was working for at the time said, oh, yeah, go ahead, do it. That's great. And I said, well, it's going to be, I think it was like $1,000 an issue. And I was new at the company, and they said, yeah, you should go do it. Great. And then I get the bill. So I forward the bill to my manager at that time, and they go, well, we're not paying it. You have to pay it. I was like, I asked you if $1,000 a month is fine. And they were like, yeah, no, it's fine for you to go take on that expense. So I had to have a very uncomfortable conversation with a guy who thought he sold me 12 months of the back cover of a real estate magazine, of a local magazine. However, I was already locked in for the first month. And you just take your lumps in business and you go, hey, it is what it is. Oddly enough, it's a couple of weeks later and I'm sitting in New York. I had to travel back to New York for some sort of business. And I'll never forget, you called me and you said, hey, are you Michael Most? I saw your ad on the back of this magazine. At first, I'm like, nah, this is some sort of scam, or I don't know, because I got 0 phone calls, Bill, from that thing ever. And the point I'm making here is that through that, it's been 5, 6, 7+ years. You've become a very close friend of mine, someone in the community, someone that introduced me to one of my other coaches that I worked with in the past, has really helped me develop and understand my business. And all because you were just genuinely building out your network, which helped me build out my network from literally just a magazine ad. So it's light for anyone that's trying to always look for an ROI directly on, oh, I spent $1 on marketing. Well, where am I going to ever get it back, right? Sometimes it's about the bigger picture. And for me, I'm extremely grateful. So is there something that was maybe not as funny as ironic as it may be, but any good, fun story you can share with us, whether from your debate days all the way to your probate days?
You know, I think something with a business angle to it is on the same topic. So my coaching when I was in real estate was everybody you ever meet goes in your database. Everybody you ever meet. And you need to communicate with them regularly. You have to have a plan. And so in those days, even when I was coaching and not selling primarily, I sent an email out every week. And I literally had a guy who I'd met like 7 years prior who out of the blue called me like he knew me because he had read my email every week and I have some video on that. And I didn't know who the hell he was. And it was a property that I ended up listing and selling. And it worked out really well just because he was a name in my database. So I had this email I was doing regularly. At the time, I was sending it out to the people in my database that I identified as my COI, my center of influence. So at that time, I've been in business, I'm 66 years old. I've been in business for 38 years. I had, at the time, probably 16,000 names, emails. I had every single lender, title, escrow, assistant, everybody who called about a house, everybody that came to an open house. They may unsubscribe, but I had them all there. And what's interesting was I would send this email out and watch the open rate, but I sent out to the half they had I'd been designated my COI, which was about 8,000 of the 16. I said, well, who are these other 8,000 people? Who are 8,000 people I met that are not in my COI. How could that even be? And I looked through the list of the email addresses. I couldn't wait till I said, you know what, I'm going to A/B test. I'm going to send the exact same email, the same exact everything, same time, half to this group, half the other group, and it had the same open rate. And I think what I learned from that was that there are more people in our lives who are looking for help than we would imagine. And if we get out of thinking about how am I turning this into a deal and really into how can I help more people? How can I build a platform where I can teach people how to accumulate wealth, about opportunity, help them be positive? You know, I was very blessed through COVID. I have a wife. I have a daughter who's married, lives nearby. We have now 3 grandkids. A lot of people suffered. And so I just felt like continuing to reach out, to contact people, having the podcast was a way to be of service. And if you focus on that, my first mentor was Zig Ziglar. He said, you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And so I've just really tried to focus, even like probate, talk about how to avoid probate, how to work through probate, how to find good attorneys. I really try to focus on helping people, as many as possible, and the numbers have kind of taken care of themselves.
It's amazing. And that's a great segue into, I like to ask all my guests what their favorite book was in their lifetime that has influenced them mostly, whether in personal life or in business. So you are extremely well read, extremely well educated. If you had to pick one book, I always go to my Michael Gerber, which is E-Myth, really helped me differentiate.
Phenomenal.
And then on a personal side, it's How to Win Friends and Influence Others. I was just blown away by Carnegie on the simplicity of learning to be quiet and listen. And I'll share with you before I ask you to share your book. So I literally was just away on vacation with my wife, and we stayed at a beautiful hotel. And the hotel on the last night had a really bad stench in the room. It had rained the day before, and I guess some sewage or some backup. It really, really smelled. So I knew at checkout, I was going to have to bring this up to them, right? And so, you know, the dynamics between a husband and a wife. There's always like, one person has one personality, the other. So my wife and I are extremely different, and I needed to prep with her before. I said, babe, way this goes down is either my style or your style. It can't go both ways.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to handle this, great. But if you want me to handle it, I'm going to handle it my way. Right.
Just step out of the way. Let me do my job.
Let me just do what I like to do. But I can't do my thing where you like, you know what I mean, chime in. It doesn't work. So she's like, I'm not going to say a word. You do you. I said, okay. I said, what do you want to get out of this? And we had stayed there, I think, 4 or 5 nights. She said, I think they should give us back one night, right? As like just waive one night because it kind of wasn't good for 2 nights, but we should get it back at least one night. And I said, great, let's try. So I go there and I said, who's the manager? And the manager comes over to me. Now, by the way, this is in Mexico. So one is a very broken English. The other is fluent English. So, but they want to meet us together. So they walk us over to the side, which I already saw was very professional. And they said, we understand there's a problem. Please tell us. You know, they want to listen. They want to hear. So I said, well, I'm staying at this hotel because it's a very high-end hotel. I really appreciate everything. Everything was great. Right? You know, it was the whole sandwich thing, you know, and I genuinely meant it. I loved everything about the food, the accommodations, the room. Everything was great. I said, however, I just want to share with you, when you're paying top dollar for these kind of resorts, you expect a certain quality. You know, I wasn't staying at a Marriott. I was staying at a much higher end resort. So I said it was just a little surprising for me that you would have accommodations that would have a wretched smell and that this wasn't handled. Right. And so I said, I'm giving you this feedback because I just want you to know my experience. I came into this expecting a much higher experience from the class and level that you're at. And that's not what I got. So let's stop here for a second. My whole approach was not to attack them, but just to let them really know where I was coming from. I was expecting a very different experience. I didn't get it. Now, here's the point where I've learned from Carnegie. Here's where you need to shut up, as we say. You have to stop talking after this. And you can't beat the point to a dead beat, you know what I mean, to a dead pulp or anything like that, and just be quiet. So he reiterates back to me what the problem is. And I don't flinch. I don't say a word. I just go, yep, you nailed it. That's the problem. And he goes, so then he starts into the debate and he goes, well, he starts negotiating. He goes, would you want to come back to this place again? I said, would I want to come back here? Sure. I say, look, I like to check out all your chains and I do like to travel, but I'm not saying I wouldn't come back here, but what do you have in mind? So instead of assuming where he might be going with this or where he's not, I had to keep it open. It's where do you want to go with this? And his answer was, what if we comp you to come back and we'll cover all the nights that you come back for? Come back for 3 nights or 2 nights, I'm sorry. And we'll give you free 2 nights to come back here. Would you come back? Let us earn the right to show you how staying here would be the best experience you'd ever want. Now, to me, this was a win on every angle. I thought the way they handled it was amazing. I was proud of the way I handled it for not over talking or overselling it in any sort of way. And this was literally 101 out of Carnegie, where just express what you want to get across the other side and then be quiet and let them speak and let them come up with the solution. So sorry, that took a very long time to get out, but it was an experience that I literally just went through.
So, I mean, I read a lot. I love reading. My favorite hobby, I think. And when you ask me a question, my mind just went crazy with different books. But just listening to you, I think one of the most impactful books on me personally, and it's an interesting book in that I'm a religious Jew and I really love Jewish texts. But the book that really impacted me when I was a young adult was when I wasn't religious, is a Christian-based book called A Course in Miracles. And it's a book that has a cult following almost, where people do study groups. There was that Marianne Williamson running for president is one of the people kind of involved with that group. The book is amazing. And as a Jew, I can kind of tone out the Christian side and learn from it, which is what I did. And one of the most amazing quotes from that book that I've carried my entire adult life is, all communication is either a expression of love or a cry for help. And so we as professionals, when we deal with customers sometimes, or we deal with vendors, we deal with attorneys or lenders or escrow, oftentimes people attack us and we have to understand, what are they really doing here? Are they asking me to help them, or are they in pain and having a problem? And if I can't answer that question, I really can't be of value. So I have to listen to figure out where they're coming from. And I think that's true in dealing with your spouse, with your kids, with all personal relationships. And so much of success, as much as I'd like to make it about the technical granularity of probate real estate, it also means I have to be able to communicate effectively with the attorney, with the objectors, with the heirs, with the benefactors and the vendors and such. In this case, the customer can be very emotional, and I've kind of let her be with herself before I can be of help. So I would say Course in Miracles is a book I would really recommend, particularly the quote, and there's different study guides, but I would say all communication is either a cry for help or an expression of love.
I love that. And, just to round this out and to end things off, I will tell you that I started this podcast, which is The Most Mindset. And part of it is about having a certain mindset in how I originate, how I go about my business, how I support the people that work with me, and the other originators that I am recruiting and or coming to work under this platform. You are such a great example of someone that also leads and lives your life by a certain mindset. So it's really not just an honor, and that's like a fluffy word, but I genuinely mean it, that I'm so glad that our paths have crossed and that we are in each other's lives, because you're someone that I learned so much from, that has your mindset and your way of going about doing business, which is an honest and never really taking, more always trying to give. So appreciate you being here today. This was awesome. I could talk to you for hours. We're due for a walk one of these days, that's for sure. But really, just appreciate you coming on today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. I always enjoy. It's interesting, if I could just say, I saw the title of your podcast being Mindset, and I had never really thought about it, but I did realize, if I said, well, what's one characteristic that really distinguishes you? You were newer in California. Yeah, your loan business really well, but there are other people who do too. It is your mindset. You have an expectation of success that's infectious, and that I've always enjoyed being around. And so I enjoy listening to your episodes. I wish you continued success. And for those watching this, the loan I just gave him was really because, it's hard to remember people in the moment. I had seen he just launched this podcast. I said, you know what? I need to call Michael with his lead right now, right this minute. And here we're closing this nice $1 million plus loan, I think. So thank you for your service, and thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Bill. Talk to you soon.